You wear masks, not because you're a liar, but because the world taught you that truth is dangerous. Since childhood, you've learned to shrink, to soften your voice, to dilute your desires just enough to remain acceptable. You became skilled in the art of self-erasure, and you called that empathy. But what if I told you that this was not kindness, but fear in costume? Fear that if you show your true face, they will leave. Fear that your rawness, your contradictions, your edges are unlovable. So you smile when you're broken, you stay when you should run, you nod when your soul screams no. You let yourself be devoured, and then call it connection. But this is not love. This is spiritual prostitution, a trade, your essence for their approval. Have you ever stopped to ask, who are you beneath the applause? If the world stopped clapping, would you still dance? There is a version of you buried beneath years of performance, of polite silence, of desperate grins. That version doesn't beg. It enters a room and changes the air. It doesn't explain, it doesn't seek permission. It simply is. And its very existence is a threat to everything built on manipulation. That self, that wild and unapologetic self, has been asleep, not dead. You feel it sometimes in the heat rising in your chest when you're disrespected, in the rage you swallow with a smile. That self wants to rise, not to destroy, but to finally live. The time has come to stop being the agreeable ghost at the dinner table. Of your own life, you became easy to predict. That's your real curse, not that you're too kind, but that your kindness became mechanical, automatic, a reflex of fear, not a choice of strength. They know you'll say yes. They know you'll forgive. They know you'll stay. So they stop fearing your absence. They stop respecting your presence. Your gentleness has become currency in a market of vultures, and every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, you trade dignity for illusion. Don't. Confuse politeness with integrity. A man who never says no isn't noble. He's invisible. He dissolves into the needs of others and calls that love. But love that costs your selfhood is nothing but emotional slavery. Respect is not born from being liked. It is born from being feared just enough, not the fear of violence or cruelty, but the sacred fear of consequence. The awareness that your presence is not guaranteed, that your silence is not consent, that your love is not unconditional when it comes to your own soul. The world, like a child, tests. It pushes until it meets resistance, and if there is none, it concludes, this one has no backbone, and then it devours. Not because it's evil, but because it's instinct. Do you see now? Your boundaries are not acts of aggression. They are invitations to respect, and your disappearances, your sacred silences, your chosen absences are the loudest declarations of worth. They told you it was noble to be endlessly understanding, to forgive before apologies, to stay soft even when carved open. But they never warned you that constant accessibility rots the soul, that being emotionally available to everyone is the fastest way to become invisible to yourself. There is nothing sacred in letting yourself be drained. There is no virtue in being the emotional landfill of others. You were not born to be everyone's safe place. You were born to be your own fortress first. Stop calling it compassion when it's actually fear of abandonment. Dressed in virtue, you're not helping anyone by disappearing inside their storms. What if the nice version of you isn't your highest self, but your most edited? What if your true strength isn't in being agreeable, but in being unapologetically present? The world teaches you to earn love by softening, by shrinking, by smoothing out every edge until you're digestible. But respect is not earned through dilution. It's forged in friction, in saying no when everything in you trembles, in walking away without offering explanations, in becoming the kind of person whose absence is heavier than most people's presence. That's the shift, from being liked to being felt, deeply, unforgettably, even if it means you'll be misunderstood, even if it means some will call you cold. Let them. Ice doesn't apologize for not being water. There is a disease spreading through the souls of the well-behaved. It's subtle, like carbon monoxide, silent, odorless, lethal. It's called the need to be liked. It whispers, don't rock the boat. Smile even when it hurts. Say yes even when you want to scream. But this disease doesn't just steal your voice. It erodes your identity, piece by piece, smile by smile, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the obedient stranger staring back. You wonder when it happened. When did you stop disagreeing? When did you start apologizing for existing? It wasn't sudden. It was death by 1,000 politenesses. The path back is brutal, but holy. It begins with a violent honesty. I'm tired of being accessible to those who drain me. Say it. Then say it again. Say it until your voice no longer trembles, because until you reclaim your no, your yes means nothing. You were not put on this earth to be decoration. You were not born to be a mirror reflecting what others want to see. You were meant to cast your own light, even if it blinds the ones who got used to your dim version. There is a beast inside you, not to harm, but to protect. Your time, your energy, your truth. The world will resist this shift. They'll say you've changed, let them. You were never meant to stay digestible. You see, those who are most respected are not necessarily the kindest, but the clearest. They carry their boundaries like silent thunder. No need to raise their voices. Their presence alone recalibrates the room. People don't cross them, not because they bark or bite, but because their absence would be too costly. These people don't chase connection. They attract it. And they attract it because they don't need it. There's power in being willing to walk away, in knowing you are not a beggar at the banquet of affection, but the host of your own soul's feast. You don't knock on locked doors when you know you are the door. Kindness without boundaries is not virtue, it's self-erasure. And the world, indifferent, impulsive, hungry, will eat what you serve without ever asking if you're starving. Stop bleeding for those who wouldn't. Give you a bandage. Stop calling it loyalty when it's really a fear of being alone. Your value doesn't rise with your availability. It rises with your selectivity. You are not here to be everyone's favorite flavor. You are here to be unforgettable to the few who see your worth without discounts. Raise the price, raise the standard, raise yourself. You think people leave because you're too much, but the truth is, they often leave when they realize they can no longer control you. When the version of you they manipulated begins to speak, begins to stand, begins to see, that's when they vanish. Not because you've changed into someone awful, but because you've returned to someone whole. Don't mourn the loss of those who only loved the leash, not the lion. The moment you begin to love yourself in your full intensity, your full contradiction, your full inconvenient truth, the masks around you will begin to fall. That is not loneliness. That is liberation. You've spent a lifetime curating your behavior to be digestible. At school, at home, in love, everywhere you learned that acceptance was conditional. You adjusted. You played the character. And it worked. They called you kind. They called you selfless. But what they really meant was, you make my life easier. And every time you complied, your spirit shrank a little more. Until now. Now you are beginning to see that peace at the cost of your voice is a cage lined with compliments. That being easy to love means being easy to use. And that maybe, just maybe, the price of respect is the willingness to be disliked. You've mistaken performance for presence. You think because you're always there, always responding, always available, you're being loving. But love without edges becomes obligation, and obligation without reciprocity becomes resentment. You don't owe anyone your constant availability. The sun does not shine 24 hours a day, and yet without it, life dies. Your presence should feel like that. Necessary, not expected. Sacred, not convenient. If they only love you when you're easy, what they love is their comfort, not your soul. True love honors the mystery of your no. True connection begins where performance ends. They told you to be good, but they never told you that good often means obedient, that good often means invisible, that good often means broken in all the right places, just enough to be harmless. But let me tell you, the world doesn't need more good people. It needs whole ones. People who can say no with the same grace they say yes. People who know their value even when no one claps. People who walk away without slamming doors, but leave silence heavy enough to echo. Wholeness is not the absence of flaws. It's the presence of boundaries. And it begins the moment you stop performing goodness and start embodying truth. They say you've changed, that you've become distant, colder, harder. But what they really mean is, you've stopped being easy to manipulate. You've stopped offering yourself like a buffet of comfort to those who only show up when they're hungry. You've stopped sacrificing your evenings, your energy, your peace, just to keep people warm who would never light a fire for you. That isn't cruelty, that's clarity. It's what happens when your soul grows tired of being furniture in someone else's story. You are not a chair, you are the architecture. Let them be uncomfortable. Growth always feels like betrayal to those who benefit from your smallness. You no longer need to shout to be heard. Your silence when chosen is thunder. Your absence when earned is a sermon. Let your disappearance teach what your patience failed to. This is not pettiness, it is pedagogy. Respect is not born in conversations, it is born in consequence. Every time you walk away from what diminishes you, you teach the world how to treat you. Every time you draw a line and defend it, you rewire the fabric of your self-worth. Stop negotiating your worth with those who speak the language of exploitation. Speak a new language, one made of limits, mystery, and holy detachment. Do not confuse being tolerated with being valued. The world is full of people who will keep you close, not because they love you, but because your presence is convenient. You become their emotional sponge, their backup plan, their silent supporter. Always there, always soft. But ask yourself, who holds you when you collapse? Who listens when your soul whispers instead of screams? If the answer is no one, it's not because you're too much. It's because you've taught them you require too little. And now you must unteach them, not with speeches but with silence, not with warnings but with distance. You do not need to announce your evolution. Evolve anyway. The strongest people are not the ones who never bend. They are the ones who know when to bend and when to become stone. There is power in selectivity, in conserving your energy for those who actually recognize your worth without a performance. Stop explaining your boundaries. Stop asking for permission to enforce your standards. Boundaries are not a discussion. They are declarations. And declarations are not up for negotiation. When you realize this, something ancient awakens inside you, a fire that remembers you are not furniture, you are flame. Let the cold fear you, let the dark respect your light. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not forged in the fires of existence just to become decoration in someone else's comfort zone. There's a beast inside you, not evil but ancient, not cruel but clear. It watches every time you betray yourself with a smile, every time you say yes when you mean hell no, every time you stay to keep the peace while your inner world burns. That beast isn't trying to destroy your life. It's trying to rescue you, because it knows the truth. The longer you suppress your truth, the sicker you become, and not just emotionally. Your body begins to rebel. Your chest tightens. Your sleep becomes restless. Your soul withers. This is not just emotional dissonance. It is spiritual suicide. You want to be whole? Then let your no be sacred. Let your absence be a prayer. Let your silence be a boundary no one dares to cross. The world does not need another nice person dying inside. It needs warriors of self-respect. And that doesn't mean screaming or demanding. It means not showing up where your worth is invisible. It means no longer auditioning for love. No longer shrinking to fit into spaces unworthy of your presence. It means walking out of the room quietly and locking the door behind you, not to punish, but to protect. You don't owe anyone your accessibility. You only owe yourself your truth. Do not expect others to value what you discount in yourself. The world learns how to treat you by observing what you tolerate. And if you consistently tolerate being disrespected, overlooked, or emotionally underfed, they will believe you prefer crumbs. They will give you less, not out of cruelty, but because you set the price, raise it. The respect you crave will not arrive until you stop offering your soul at clearance. When you treat your presence like it's precious, others either rise to meet your worth or they disappear. Both outcomes are blessings. You lose nothing when you stop being cheap with your own energy. There's a moment when the pain of pleasing becomes greater than the fear of being misunderstood. When that moment arrives, don't ignore it. That is the signal, the beginning of your resurrection. The day you no longer need to convince people of your goodness. The day you no longer argue with those committed to misunderstanding you. From that day on, your peace becomes more expensive. Your time becomes less available. Your truth becomes louder, not in volume, but in consequence. You become dangerous, not because you intend harm, but because you finally honor yourself. And in a world addicted to obedience, self-respect is an act of quiet rebellion. They say presence is power, but absence, when deliberate, is revolution. Most people fear being forgotten. You must learn to weaponize disappearance, not as manipulation, but as revelation. Let them feel the emptiness of a room where your energy once warmed the air. Let them ache for your eyes, your listening, your fire, after they've mistaken your devotion for default. Silence is not weakness. It is the sacred language of those who've stopped begging. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop filling the gaps of their ignorance with your energy, a strange thing happens. They start to listen, or they vanish. Either way, you win. There is no clarity more violent and more healing than realizing that some people only loved you when you were easy to exploit, when you said yes without pause, when you forgave before the apology, when you bled quietly and called it loyalty. The hardest lesson is not that they failed to love you. It's that you trained them to believe you didn't require more. But now the training ends. Now you return to yourself, not with vengeance, but with sovereignty. You are not here to be anyone's emotional charity. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be. Fully, fiercely, finally. You've been told that love conquers all, but they never told you what kind of love. Not the one that demands your silence, not the one that thrives on your exhaustion, not the love that only exists when you're agreeable. That's not love, that's dependency and drag. Real love respects boundaries. Real love doesn't shrink you to fit. Real love doesn't panic when you say no. If someone's affection evaporates the moment you assert yourself, it wasn't love, it was control. And control doesn't mourn your pain, it mourns the loss of power. So stop grieving the approval of those who only loved you obedient. You are not here to be domesticated. You want a revolution. Start here. Withdraw your presence from those who treat it like an obligation. Let your no echo louder than your yes ever did. Let your standards be non-negotiable. You are not arrogant, you are awake. Awake to the fact that your kindness was weaponized against you. Awake to the truth that your empathy, while beautiful, must now be guarded, because love without discernment is martyrdom, and you were not born to die on the altar of everyone else's comfort. You were born to rise, even if it means some will curse your flight. Let them. The eagle is never loved by those who crawl. There is no applause in solitude, no validation in silence, but there is truth, and truth, once embraced, becomes a fortress. You've spent your life performing, for love, for safety, for inclusion, but who are you when the curtain falls? When there's no audience, no applause, no one left to impress? That person, raw, unfiltered, unedited, is the one you must now befriend. That's your real face, the one you've hidden beneath masks of agreeability and sacrifice. And only when you stop fearing that face will the world begin to fear and respect your presence, not because you demanded it, but because you finally embodied it. Let them think you've changed. Let them whisper that you've become distant, strange, too quiet. Let them wonder. Mystery is power. You don't owe them explanations. You owe yourself evolution. There is a sovereignty in becoming unreadable to those who once thought they owned you. Let your silence make them uncomfortable. Let your detachment burn where your begging used to kneel. You are not punishing anyone. You are prioritizing your sanity. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from those who loved only your submission. Respect doesn't bloom in comfort. It grows in contrast, in the dissonance between who they thought you were and who you now choose to be. You were their cushion, their backup, their emotional valet. And now you are unavailable, unreachable, unapologetic. That shift unsettles them because it forces a confrontation with their entitlement, their convenience, their expectation of your endless sacrifice. You have shattered the mirror they used to validate themselves, and while they scramble to adjust to your new shape, you remain still, sovereign, unbothered. There's a sacred violence in no longer needing to explain your glow. You do not need to burn yourself to warm others. You do not need to shatter just to be understood. If they cannot respect you whole, let them go. Wholeness is not negotiable. And peace is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of boundaries. Your silence now speaks louder than your old pleas. Your indifference teaches more than your overgiving ever did. You are no longer a love letter desperate to be read. You are scripture, sacred, solid, unchanging. Let only the worthy decipher you. They'll say you're cold now, that you've lost your warmth, but what they're Really, mourning is the convenience of your old compliance. You were never cold. You were burning constantly for others, burning your time, your kindness, your compassion, just to keep the illusion alive. But the fire was never yours alone to tend. Now, you've learned to keep that fire sacred. No more throwing logs into ungrateful hearths. Let them shiver. Let them remember the warmth they never thanked. That's not cruelty. That's justice. That's self-respect in its purest, most unforgiving form. And in that cold you will find heat, the warmth of your own clarity, the calm of finally being aligned with your truth. You'll laugh differently now. You'll walk heavier. You'll sit in rooms and feel no need to prove anything. That is power. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that radiates. They'll feel it. They'll sense it. And they'll either rise to meet you or flee from the light. Either way, your only task is to stay rooted, unshakable, whole. Because the journey back to yourself is not a performance, it's a homecoming. And now at the end of this journey, let one truth remain. You were never meant to be palatable. You were meant to be real. And realness offends the systems built on comfort and control. So be offensive. Be the storm that washes away pretense. Be the silence that deafens manipulation. Be the mirror that cracks their delusions. You do not exist to be digested. You exist to be witnessed. In your complexity, your contradictions, your raw and radiant truth. The world will try to shrink you again. It will try to seduce you back into silence with compliments, guilt, or nostalgia. Resist. Stay loud, even when silent. Stay firm, even when alone. If you've made it this far, don't thank me. Thank yourself for the courage to listen, not just to these words, but to the voice within you that's been whispering all along. Enough. Enough shrinking. Enough begging. Enough performing. It's time to stand, not as a spectacle, but as a sovereign. Like Nietzsche said, become who you are, not who they prefer. If this spoke to you, speak back, comment, share, or disappear quietly into your own rebirth. Whatever you choose, just don't go back to sleep. The world doesn't need more agreeable ghosts. It needs you awake, unfiltered, and finally free.